Dr. Michael Graves was not your ordinary man. He was a pathologist, the kind of doctor who spends more time with the dead than the living. Every morning, he arrived at the city morgue with his black coffee, his tired eyes, and his little notebook. Michael had a strange habit. He counted. He counted everything: the steps from his car to the morgue door, the keys on his desk, the number of light flickers in the hallway, but most importantly, he counted the bodies. Every single day, he wrote the number of bodies in his notebook. 17 today, he'd whisper, scribbling it down. But then, when he came back later, something was always wrong. Sometimes there were 16. Sometimes 18, sometimes 15. The bodies didn't match. At first, Michael thought he was just tired. Long shifts, too much coffee, maybe a little stress. But the problem kept happening. Again and again, bodies seemed to appear and disappear from the cold steel drawers of the morgue. And here's the strangest part. No one else noticed. The security guards, the assistants, the police officers bringing new cases, they all acted like everything was normal. But Michael knew. He always knew. The numbers were never right. One evening, when the morgue was unusually quiet, Michael decided to stay late. He wanted answers. He wanted to catch the mistake, if it even was a mistake. That night, he opened the drawers one by one. He counted carefully. 16 bodies. He wrote it down. 16. But then, when he came back later, something was always wrong. Another drawer was open, and there was a 17th body. A body that hadn't been there before. Michael's hands trembled. He closed his notebook. For the first time in years, the pathologist felt something he wasn't used to feeling. Fear.
Michael stood frozen in the cold morgue, staring at the new body. It was a man, pale and tall, with dark hair slicked back as if he'd just stepped out of a rainstorm. His face was calm, too calm, almost peaceful. But here was the problem. Michael knew every case. He had seen every accident victim, every crime scene, every poor soul who ended up in his care. And this man, he wasn't one of them. Michael leaned closer. The tag on the toe should have had a name, a number, something, but it was blank. Just an empty piece of cardboard tied with string. He swallowed hard. "This isn't possible," he whispered to himself. The morgue was silent. Too silent. Michael closed the drawer quickly and stepped back, his notebook clutched tight in his hand. 16. 17. Was he losing his mind? The next morning, Michael tried to push it aside. He told himself maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe he had counted wrong. But when he returned to the morgue after lunch, his blood ran cold. The 17th body was gone. The drawer was empty, as if it had never been used. He checked the security cameras in the hallway. He expected to see someone, an assistant, a police officer, anyone wheeling the body away. But the screen showed nothing. The camera feed flickered, went black for 2 minutes, then came back. And during those 2 minutes, the body vanished. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the pale man's face, that calm expression, that empty tag. And then, at 3 in the morning, Michael's phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a notification from the morgue's security system. Motion detected in storage room. Michael sat up in bed, heart pounding. Nobody should have been in the morgue at that hour. Nobody. He stared at his phone, his breath uneven. For a long moment, he considered ignoring it, but deep down, he knew he couldn't. Something was happening, and he was going to find out what.
Michael drove through the empty city streets, the glow of his headlights cutting through the fog. The morgue sat at the end of a quiet road,
its windows dark, its doors locked. It looked more like a tomb than a workplace. He parked, sat for a moment in the silence, and asked himself the question he'd been avoiding all day. Am I imagining this? But the security alert was real. Something had moved inside. Michael unlocked the morgue with his pass and pushed the heavy doors open. The air was colder than usual, biting against his skin. His footsteps echoed as he walked down the long, sterile corridor. The storage room was at the end, the same place where he'd seen the mysterious 17th body. He reached the door, hand trembling on the handle. For a moment, he hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he pushed it open. The smell of disinfectant and cold metal filled his nose. The room was silent. Still. Michael pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light swept across the drawers. He began to count. 1, 2, 3. He counted carefully, drawer by drawer, until he reached 16. 16. He exhaled slowly. Maybe it really was just his imagination. But then, behind him, metal scraped. Michael spun around. One drawer was sliding open by itself. Inside, lying perfectly still, was the 17th body. The same man. The same peaceful face. The same blank tag. Michael's phone shook in his hand. His breath turned shallow. He stepped closer, against his better judgment, and whispered, "Who are you?" The corpse's eyes snapped open. Two pale, lifeless eyes stared straight at him. Michael stumbled back, nearly dropping his phone. For a long second, the dead man just stared. Silent. Still. And then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, the corpse spoke. "You're missing one."
Michael froze. His entire body turned to stone as those 3 words echoed in the cold room. "You're missing one." The corpse's lips didn't move again. The eyes stayed wide open, staring at him as if waiting for a response. Michael's voice cracked. "What do you mean? Missing one what?" But the body gave no answer. Slowly, almost mechanically, the eyelids closed again. The morgue was silent once more. Michael backed away until his shoulders hit the wall. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his breath fogging in the cold air. Finally, he forced himself to look at the notebook in his hand. The last entry, 16 bodies. But the corpse said he was missing one, which meant there should be 17. Michael's shaking fingers opened the other drawers, one by one, counting. 16. Always 16. Never 17. Until he opened the very last drawer, at the bottom. Empty. But when he looked closer, his stomach dropped. There was a faint outline on the sheet. The shape of a body, as if something invisible had been lying there. The fabric was pressed down, creased by weight that wasn't there anymore. Michael whispered to himself, "There was someone here." And then from the hallway outside came the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. Michael turned off his phone's flashlight and held his breath. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. For a moment there was silence. Then a voice spoke, low and rasping.
as if carried by the walls themselves. 17. Michael's blood turned to ice. He wasn't alone. Michael's heart pounded in his ears. The morgue was never supposed to feel alive, but now every sound, every shadow seemed to breathe. The voice outside had said one word, 17. Michael tightened his grip on the doorknob. For a second, he thought about locking the door, but some strange magnetic pull inside him whispered, "Open it." Against all reason, he slowly turned the handle. The heavy door creaked as it swung open. The hallway was dark, lit only by the dim glow of a single flickering bulb. At the far end, a figure stood, motionless. Michael's breath caught. It looked human, tall, thin, draped in what seemed like a long hospital gown. Its head tilted slightly, as though watching him even from the shadows. "Who's there?" Michael's voice cracked, echoing in the emptiness. The voice didn't answer. Michael stepped forward cautiously. 1 step, 2 steps. His shoes clicked against the tiles. But as he moved closer, the light flickered, and in that split second of darkness, the figure vanished. Gone. Michael spun around, scanning the hallway. Nothing. Only silence. Then, behind him, the morgue drawers slammed shut all at once with a deafening bang. Michael jumped, spinning back into the room. His notebook slipped from his hand, sliding across the floor. He dove for it, but when he picked it up, his stomach twisted. The page where he had written 16 bodies was no longer blank. Someone, or something, had written a message beneath it in jagged black ink. 17 is not enough. Michael stared at the words, his hand shaking so violently the notebook almost fell again. And then, for the first time in years, the city morgue's emergency alarm blared. A sharp, shrill siren filled the air. Red lights flashed. Something had triggered the motion detectors inside the autopsy room. Michael wasn't alone anymore.
The siren howled through the morgue, painting the walls in red flashes. Michael's ears rang, his pulse racing with each strobe of light. The motion sensors had picked up something in the autopsy room. For a moment, Michael stood frozen in the hallway, notebook clutched against his chest. His rational mind screamed, "Leave, run, get out while you can." But his body moved anyway, pulled by a force stronger than fear. He pushed open the door. The autopsy room was a sterile white chamber filled with steel tables, bright lamps, and neatly arranged tools. But now it looked different, alien, almost menacing, bathed in pulsing red light. One of the tables was occupied. Michael stopped, cold. He hadn't left any body there. He knew he hadn't. Yet now, lying under the harsh glow of the ceiling lamp, was the same man, the 17th body, the calm face, the blank toe tag. Michael's voice trembled. "What do you want from me?" The man's eyes opened again. His lips curled, just barely, into what looked like a smile. And then, without warning, the body sat up. Michael stumbled back, knocking over a tray of scalpels that clattered to the floor. The corpse tilted its head, as if studying him. Its voice was slow, deliberate, and colder than the steel around them. "It's not about what I want, Michael. It's about what's missing." Michael's throat went dry. "Missing?" The corpse raised a finger and pointed directly at him. "You." The siren suddenly cut off. Silence slammed into the room. The red lights died, leaving Michael in complete darkness. And in that darkness, he heard the sound of footsteps again, but this time,
They were inside the room with him.
The sound of footsteps echoed through the pitch-black autopsy room, slow, deliberate, circling him. Michael's breath quickened. He held his phone tightly, thumb shaking as he fumbled for the flashlight. The beam flicked on, slicing through the darkness. Empty. The tables gleamed under the light. The scalpels lay scattered on the floor. But no one was there. Michael swung the light frantically left and right, searching every corner. Nothing. Until he felt it. A breath. Cold, damp against his neck. He whipped around, flashlight trembling in his hand. The beam landed on the corpse's face, inches away, eyes wide open, staring. Michael staggered back, tripping over a stool and crashing onto the floor. His phone skidded across the tiles, the flashlight rolling. The beam spun wildly, cutting across walls and ceiling. The corpse spoke again, its voice now louder, almost distorted, like several voices overlapping. 17. You keep counting wrong. Michael scrambled to his feet, heart slamming in his chest. No, there are 16. 16. The corpse tilted its head. 16. Plus you. The words struck like ice water. For the first time, the thought crept in. Was he the missing body? Was he dead already and didn't know it? No, Michael whispered. I'm alive, I'm alive. But as he spoke, the lights in the room flickered back on. The siren blared again for a split second. Then everything went silent. Michael stood alone in the autopsy room. The corpse was gone. But when he looked down at the steel table, his stomach twisted. His notebook was lying there, open, and on the page, fresh words had appeared in that same jagged black ink. Welcome, number 17. Michael's hands shook as he picked it up. His name, Dr. Michael Graves, was now written on the morgue's tag of a corpse.
Part 8. The Morgue's Secret. Michael's breath came in short, shallow bursts as he stared at the notebook. His own name, written like a death certificate, a toe tag for a body that wasn't supposed to exist. His body. He dropped the notebook and stumbled toward the door. He needed air. He needed to leave, but when he yanked the handle, the heavy morgue door refused to budge. Locked. Michael slammed his shoulder against it. Nothing. His palms grew slick with sweat. Then, behind him, came the sound of drawers sliding open, one after another, a chorus of metal grinding against metal. He turned slowly. All 16 drawers were open, each one filled with a body, but they weren't still anymore. Their heads turned in unison, their pale eyes glowing faintly in the sterile light. Michael's throat tightened. He backed up against the door, heart hammering. The bodies began to rise, not clumsily like corpses should, but smoothly like they'd been waiting for this moment. Their mouths opened, and together they whispered, 17, 17, 17. Michael covered his ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside his skull. Their voices echoed in his mind, overlapping, drilling into him. He fell to his knees, screaming, "Stop! I'm not one of you! I'm alive!" The chanting stopped instantly. Silence. Then one of the corpses stepped forward. A woman with long hair, her skin gray and torn at the neck. Her blank eyes locked on his. And in a clear voice, she said, "You're the one who doesn't belong. You've been living among the dead all this time. Don't you wonder why no one else notices the numbers?" Michael's blood ran cold. His notebook, the counting, the missing bodies. What if it wasn't the bodies that disappeared? What if he was the one out of place?
Michael's head spun. The corpses stood around him, silent now,
their pale eyes locked on his trembling figure. The woman with the torn neck stepped closer, her voice cutting like glass. "You don't remember, do you?" Michael shook his head violently. "No, no, I'm alive! I'm alive!" But deep inside, the words tasted like a lie. The woman raised her hand and pointed at the far wall. A drawer slid open with a metallic groan. Inside, lying perfectly still, was another body. Michael's stomach dropped. It was him. His own face, his own features, his own lifeless body, tagged with the name Dr. Michael Graves. "No," he whispered. His knees buckled. "That's not me. That can't be me." The corpses closed in, surrounding him, their cold presence pressing against his skin. The woman leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "You died 2 weeks ago, Michael. Heart attack. Right here, in this room." Michael's vision blurred, memories flickered. The sharp chest pain, the collapse, the blinding white light. He had buried it, convinced himself it was a dream. But it wasn't. That's why the numbers never matched. That's why no one else noticed. Because Michael Graves had been counting himself all along. He staggered back, clutching his head. "No, no, I still breathe. I still feel. The corpses spoke together, their voices one chilling harmony. "You're the missing one. Number 17. Michael screamed, the sound echoing off the steel walls. And then, all at once, the lights shut off. Total darkness.
The darkness swallowed Michael whole. His heartbeat roared in his ears, but even that began to fade, like sound drowning under water. He stumbled blindly, hands brushing cold steel drawers on either side. The corpses were gone. The chanting was gone. Only silence remained. Then he felt it, a hand on his shoulder. Icy, firm. Michael froze. Slowly he turned. The 17th body stood before him. The pale man with slicked hair, calm as ever, that blank tag dangling from his toe. But this time he wasn't lying in a drawer. He was standing tall, alive. Or something close to alive. The man leaned close, whispering, "It's time to stop counting." Michael's chest tightened, his breath hitched, his vision blurred into black. When the lights flickered back on, the autopsy room looked normal again. Quiet, still. 16 bodies rested in their drawers, all accounted for. And on the 17th table lay Dr. Michael Graves. His eyes were closed. His notebook rested on his chest, open to the final page. The handwriting was his own, shapy but unmistakable. 17. Complete. The room was silent, peaceful, as if nothing had ever been wrong. And yet, if you listened closely, in the hum of the morgue's cold air, a faint whisper drifted through the room. 18.